Have you ever found yourself tangled in a debate only to realize afterward that something felt off, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? Maybe your opponent seemed to win the argument, not because they were right, but because they twisted words or played on emotions. If so, you've witnessed the power of logical fallacies, those sneaky errors in reasoning that can derail any discussion. The secret to never losing an argument isn't about having all the answers. It's about spotting these fallacies quickly and calling them out, so you always anchor the conversation in truth and clarity. Let's start with the basics. A logical fallacy is simply a flaw in reasoning, a trick or illusion of thought. People often use them, sometimes without even realizing it, to persuade, distract, or win at all costs. To master the art of spotting logical fallacies, you need to recognize the most common types and know exactly what to do when you encounter them. Imagine you're talking with a colleague about a new project. She says, "We should do it this way, because that's how we've always done it." This is a classic example of the appeal to tradition fallacy. Just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way. When you spot this, try responding with something like, "Can we look at the results? Maybe there's a better way." Instantly, you shift the focus from tradition to evidence and improvement. Or picture a heated online debate. Someone writes, "If you care about the environment, you must hate technology." Here you see the false dichotomy, or the black or white fallacy. It assumes only two options exist when, in reality, there are many. When you spot this trick, gently point out the middle ground. Say, "Actually, I think it's possible to care about the environment and appreciate technology. Let's explore how they can support each other." You've just taken control of the conversation by refusing to be boxed into an extreme. Another one you'll see everywhere is the Strawman Fallacy. Your friend says, "You want to eat healthier? So you're saying we should never enjoy a cookie again?" Here, your real argument has been exaggerated or distorted. The key is to calmly restate your point. "I'm not suggesting we eliminate treats, just that we make healthier choices most of the time." By clarifying your position, you expose the misrepresentation and keep the discussion honest. What about the ad hominem attack? This is when someone attacks the person instead of the argument. For example, "You're too young to understand this issue." The best response is to bring the focus back to the topic. "Let's look at the points I've made instead of my age." You show maturity and refuse to get sidetracked by personal jabs. Let's not forget the slippery slope fallacy. This is when someone claims that a small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of related events with negative outcomes. Imagine a coworker saying, "If we let people work from home one day a week, soon no one will come to the office at all." Here, challenge the chain of events. One day a week doesn't mean every day. Let's see how it works and adjust if necessary. You introduce reason and calm, stopping the runaway train of fear-based thinking. Now you may wonder, how do you actually spot these fallacies in real time? The answer is simple. Listen for leaps in logic, emotional appeals, or arguments that attack people instead of ideas. Anytime someone says always, never, or makes an extreme claim, pause and check for hidden assumptions. If the argument feels like it's moving too fast from one thing to another, or if you feel emotionally manipulated, a fallacy may be at play. Let's get even more practical. Here's a checklist you can use in any conversation. 1. Listen for structure. Is the argument based on facts or on feelings and assumptions? When evaluating any argument, listen for structure rather than getting swayed by emotional appeals or personal biases. A sound argument typically builds upon a logical framework, progressing from clear premises to a well-supported conclusion. For example, imagine a friend trying to convince you to invest in a new, unproven cryptocurrency. If their argument primarily focuses on how everyone else is getting rich, or it just feels right, without providing any data on market analysis, technological innovation, or risk assessment, they're likely relying on feelings and assumptions. A structured, fact-based argument, however, would present verifiable data, expert opinions, and a reasoned analysis of the cryptocurrency's potential, allowing you to make an informed decision rather than being swept up in hype. By dissecting the underlying architecture of their reasoning, you can quickly discern if it's built on solid ground or a shaky foundation of mere sentiment. 2. Watch for extremes. Are you being pushed toward an all-or-nothing choice? When analyzing an argument, it's crucial to watch for extremes. This means paying close attention to whether you're being pushed toward an all-or-nothing choice. This tactic, often a logical fallacy like a false dilemma or false dichotomy, presents only two extreme options as if they are the only possibilities, when in reality, a spectrum of choices or a middle ground likely exists. For instance, consider a political debate where a speaker declares, "Either we drastically cut all social programs or our economy will collapse entirely." This statement presents two dire, opposing scenarios, ignoring potential solutions like targeted reforms, gradual adjustments, or alternative revenue streams. Recognizing such extreme framing allows you to challenge the presented choices and explore other viable options, preventing you from being manipulated into a restrictive, binary decision. 3. Check for relevance. Is the response addressing your point or dodging it with a personal attack or emotional story? When engaged in any discussion, it's vital to check for relevance. This means discerning whether the response you're receiving directly addresses your point, or if the speaker is dodging it with a personal attack or emotional story. This common tactic, often an ad hominem attack or an appeal to emotion, diverts attention from the actual issue by shifting focus to the arguer's character or evoking strong feelings, rather than engaging with the substance of the argument. For example, if you question a company's financial transparency and the CEO responds by saying, "You're just a disgruntled ex-employee who never understood our vision," or shares a lengthy anecdote about a struggling family member who relies on the company, they're not addressing your financial concerns. Instead, they're attempting to discredit you or elicit sympathy to avoid the actual point. By recognizing these diversions, you can steer the conversation back to the core issue and demand a relevant answer. 4. Ask for evidence. Whenever a claim is made, politely request proof or examples. When engaging in any discussion, it's a powerful and often overlooked strategy to ask for evidence. Whenever a claim is made, politely request proof or examples. This approach isn't about being confrontational, but rather about ensuring that arguments are built on a solid foundation of verifiable facts rather than mere assertions. For instance, if someone asserts, "All teenagers today are glued to their screens and never read books," a polite request for evidence might be, "That's an interesting observation. Do you know of any recent studies or statistics that support that trend?" Or, "Could you share a specific example that led you to that conclusion?" By consistently yet courteously asking for the basis of a claim, you encourage more rigorous discourse and help distinguish between well-supported arguments and unsubstantiated opinions. 5. Restate your point. If your words are twisted, calmly repeat what you actually meant. When navigating discussions, it's essential to know when to restate your point. If your words are twisted, or your argument is misrepresented, calmly repeating what you actually meant is a powerful way to bring clarity back to the conversation. This tactic prevents the discussion from veering off course due to misinterpretation or intentional strawman arguments. For example, imagine you suggest, "We should consider flexible work hours to improve employee morale." If someone responds with, "So you're saying everyone should work whenever they feel like it, leading to chaos?" Your words have been twisted. Instead of getting defensive, calmly restate, "No, what I'm suggesting is exploring a system where employees have some flexibility in their start and end times, perhaps within a core set of hours, to better balance work and personal life, which often boosts morale and productivity." This redirects the focus back to your original nuanced idea, preventing the conversation from devolving into an irrelevant debate about extreme scenarios. The ad hominem fallacy, Latin for "to the person," is a common logical fallacy where an argument is discredited by attacking the character, motive, or other personal attributes of the person making the argument instead of addressing the substance of the argument itself. It's a diversionary tactic that avoids genuine debate. Essentially, instead of refuting a claim, the ad hominem attacks the person asserting it, implying that their personal flaws or circumstances invalidate their viewpoint. For instance, if a scientist presents research on climate change and an opponent dismisses their findings by saying, "You can't trust anything that scientist says," they're known for being a bit eccentric and often wear mismatched socks, that's an ad hominem fallacy. The scientist's eccentricity or fashion sense has absolutely no bearing on the validity or accuracy of their climate change research. The attack is irrelevant to the argument's merits, aiming only to prejudice the audience against the speaker. The strawman fallacy occurs when someone misrepresents or distorts an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. Instead of engaging with the actual argument, they create a straw man, a weakened, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated version of the original point, and then refute that distorted version, making it seem as though they have successfully refuted the opponent's true position. For example, imagine person A says, "I think we should invest more in renewable energy sources like solar and wind power to combat climate change." Person B then responds, "So, what you're saying is that we should immediately shut down all fossil fuel plants tomorrow, plunge our country into darkness, and ruin the economy? That's an irresponsible and unrealistic idea." In this scenario, person B has committed a strawman fallacy. Person A never suggested immediately shutting down all fossil fuel plants or causing an economic collapse. Person B misrepresented person A's more nuanced proposal for increased investment in renewables into an extreme, untenable position, which is then easy to knock down. The original argument about investing more in renewables was never truly addressed. The slippery slope fallacy is a logical fallacy that asserts that a relatively small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of related and increasingly negative consequences. It argues that if we allow A to happen, then Z will automatically follow, therefore A should not happen. The fallacy lies in the assumption that the chain of events is unavoidable and that there's no way to stop the progression at any intermediate point. For example, consider the argument. If we allow students to use calculators for basic math problems, they'll become completely dependent on them. Then, they'll never learn to do mental math. Their critical thinking skills will decline, and eventually, our society will lose its ability to solve complex problems and become intellectually stagnant. This is a slippery slope fallacy. While using calculators might reduce some mental math practice, it's a huge leap to conclude that it will inevitably lead to a decline in critical thinking skills and societal intellectual stagnation. There are many intermediate steps and opportunities to prevent these extreme outcomes, e.g., teaching calculator use alongside mental math, focusing on conceptual understanding, introducing more complex problems. The argument presents an exaggerated and unsubstantiated chain of negative events as an inevitable outcome of the initial relatively minor action. The No True Scotsman Fallacy is a way of protecting a generalization or an assertion from counterexamples by changing the definition of the terms in question. When a claim about a group is challenged by an individual who fits the initial description but contradicts the generalization, the arguer arbitrarily redefines the group to exclude that individual, thus maintaining the original, flawed assertion. For example, imagine someone claims, "No true football fan would ever leave a game before it's over." You then point out, "But my friend John is a huge football fan, and he left the game early last night because his child was sick." The person committing the fallacy might respond, "Ah, well, then John isn't a true football fan." Here, instead of acknowledging that their initial generalization was flawed, they've shifted the goalposts and redefined what it means to be a true football fan to exclude the counterexample. This makes the original claim unfalsifiable, as any counterexample can simply be dismissed by denying their membership in the group. The side division fallacy is a logical fallacy that occurs when one assumes that what is true for the whole must also be true for its individual parts. It's the reverse of the composition fallacy. Essentially, it wrongly infers that characteristics of a group or a larger entity automatically apply to every single member or component of that group or entity. For example, consider the argument, the company, X Corp, is incredibly successful and profitable, therefore, every single employee at X Corp must be successful and highly paid. This is a division fallacy. While X Corp, as a whole, may be thriving, it doesn't automatically mean that every individual employee shares equally in that success. Some employees might be struggling, new, in lower-paying roles, or working in departments that are not as profitable. The characteristic of success and profitability applies to the collective entity, not necessarily to each of its individual parts. Another common example: the French national football team is one of the best in the world, so every player on the team must be among the best football players in the world. Again, while the team as a unit is elite, individual players might have varying skill levels. Some might be new, or some might be specialized players who are only the best in a very specific role, not universally. The team's overall excellence doesn't automatically confer individual world-class status on every single member. The appeal to accomplishment fallacy occurs when someone asserts that a claim must be true, or that their argument is superior, simply because they or the person making the claim has achieved something significant, is successful, or holds a high status, even if that accomplishment or status is irrelevant to the truth or validity of the argument itself. It's similar to the appeal to authority, but instead of relying on expertise in a specific field, it relies on general success, wealth, or achievement as a proxy for correctness or wisdom. The fallacy lies in assuming that being accomplished in one area automatically grants infallible insight or correctness in another, unrelated area. Imagine a renowned billionaire entrepreneur who built a highly successful tech company now argues, "My new diet plan, which involves eating only raw kale and practicing extreme fasting, is definitively the healthiest way to live. I know this because I've built a multi-billion-dollar empire from scratch, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't know what I was talking about." In this scenario, the entrepreneur is committing the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. While their business success is undeniable, their ability to build a tech empire has no logical bearing on the nutritional or health validity of their diet plan. Their accomplishment in business does not automatically make them an authority on human physiology or nutrition. The argument attempts to leverage unrelated success to validate a claim in a different domain, rather than providing scientific evidence or expert medical opinion. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias where people continue to invest time, money, or effort into a failing endeavor because of the resources they have already invested, rather than making a rational decision based on future costs and benefits. It's the irrational tendency to double down on a bad decision because of what's already been sunk into it, even if abandoning it would lead to a better outcome. The core of the fallacy is the idea that past costs, which are unrecoverable, hence sunk, should influence future decisions. Logically, rational decisions should only consider future costs and benefits, not what has already been spent. Imagine you bought a non-refundable ticket for a concert for $100. On the day of the concert, you feel quite ill, the weather is terrible, and you're not really looking forward to going anymore. Your friend offers to watch a great movie with you at home, which you'd much prefer. Despite feeling unwell and preferring the movie, you decide to go to the concert anyway, thinking, "I've already paid $100 for the ticket. It would be a waste not to go." This is the sunk cost fallacy. The $100 you spent on the ticket is a sunk cost. It's gone regardless of whether you go to the concert or not. Going to the concert when you're ill and unhappy just adds more cost, your time, discomfort, missing the movie, to an already unrecoverable expense. The rational decision would be to choose the activity that brings you the most benefit now, considering only the future consequences, not the past, unrecoverable investment. You're effectively losing both the $100 and your evening's enjoyment. Remember, spotting fallacies isn't about winning by shaming the other person. It's about keeping the discussion fair, logical, and productive. The more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. You'll find yourself listening differently, catching subtle shifts in argument, and guiding conversations with confidence. Imagine you're in a team meeting and someone says, This plan can't work because last year's plan failed. That's the false cause fallacy, assuming one event causes another simply because they're related in time. Instead of accepting this, you might reply, last year's plan failed, but let's look at what's different this time. Can we identify specific reasons for the past results? You keep the group focused on facts, not assumptions. And what about the bandwagon fallacy? Everyone's using this software, so we should too. Just because something is popular doesn't make it right. Respond with, popularity doesn't always mean quality. Let's check if it fits our needs first. By questioning the herd mentality, you show independent thinking. Here's the truth. Most arguments are lost, not because someone is wrong, but because logical fallacies go unchallenged. Once you start spotting them, you level the playing field. You don't get swept up in emotion or distraction. You stay calm, focused, and persuasive. Over time, you'll notice a shift, not just in debates, but in your everyday interactions. You'll feel less anxious about confrontation because you know you have the tools to keep any discussion fair and rational. You'll gain respect from others, who see you as someone who values truth over tactics. And you'll start to influence those around you, quietly raising the standard for every conversation. So the next time you hear an argument that doesn't feel right, stop. Listen. Ask yourself, is this a logical leap, an emotional appeal, or an attack on the person? Use the techniques you've learned to gently call out the fallacy, refocus on the facts, and move forward with confidence. That's how you never lose an argument. Not by overpowering others, but by mastering the art of clear, logical thinking. And the best part? Anyone can do it. All it takes is attention, practice, and the willingness to stand up for reason every single time.